Gnocchi. Gonna help me make some lids? Make some lids? Yeah? Yeah? Oh. You're just gonna leave. Good boy. And welcome back to Good Boi Builds. So previously I said that I'll be doing more kitchen renovation videos, but I had to do this one outside project. In this episode, I need to replace two lids I have from my giant outside storage bins. A while back I built these monsters for the purpose of holding my outside workshop, bench, tent, some jigs and odd pieces of dimensional wood I'm holding onto. The two boxes together are about 3.5 feet wide, but the same depth and 16 feet across. The construction of the outside storage box is really quite simple. It's just treated plywood bottom that is sitting on some concrete blocks. The frame is made from 2x4 treated lumber that overlap a little to transfer weight down, and they're held together with some screws. It's then cladded with shiplap pine boards and coated with exterior grade water seal. The boards in the frame make the whole structure very solid. By far the biggest challenge here is making the lids for the storage bins that are watertight, right? I've seen quite a few pictures and videos of wooden outside storage bins online, and none of those would hold up well to significant rain. My first attempt also failed, but this time I think I figured it out. You basically have to treat the lids as a roof, and I'll explain the steps that I took. The humidity and temperature variations had cracked the old lids and boxes, and they're taking in water. When first making the lids, I made the mistake of screwing and gluing pine boards together and putting some bracing on the bottom. Sure, they looked nice, but were never going to stand up to the weather. So it's time to replace them. So first things first, I have to get the old lids off, and Karen was kind enough to help me out since I probably couldn't have done it myself. Yeah, this looks like a throwaway. The old lids open with the help of hinges and gas struts. I'm keeping both and reusing them for the new lids. And here's some stuff I'm currently holding in there. Old fence posts from a previous episode. Lots of leftover shims from the hallway and stair project. If you haven't seen those episodes, go check them out. But like I said, the purpose of the bin is to put away the entire workshop when in between projects. So this time around I've decided to build the lids out of treated plywood. So I'll mark out the dimensions, making the lids several inches larger in width and depth than the boxes so as to have a lip for rain prevention. And if you're cutting plywood, don't be like me, put some bracing underneath. Better late than never. Next is adding more of this rubber foam weather seal. So here I'm trying to line up the two pieces and mark out where the hinges will go. I found it easier to first attach the hinges to the new pieces and then screw the lids to the boxes. Such large lids are very cumbersome to move around by myself, so again, my wife has been kind enough to give me a helping hand. fear that using 1/2 or 3/4 inch screws would be not enough to keep the hinges securely attached to the lids, so I used bigger screws and then cut the protruding ends. And I wanted to make sure the gas struts were well secured, so I added another layer of plywood for them to screw into. I played with the position of the struts a little bit, but then they opened relatively well. The very first installation of gas struts was a nightmare. Lining everything up, as well as taking into account how much the struts will open, how fast it will close, was a bit perplexing. You also had to take into account the weight that they're supporting. Useful mechanism, but not that easy to install, especially something as large as this. Next, I was a little bit afraid that the cut ends of the plywood sheets would split from use and weather, so I sealed them with the same wood sealer I used for the sides of the bins. For extra protection, I added the water lip guard thingy using the plastic composite drywall beads. I don't remember why I used this 3-sided bead. I think I just couldn't find the 90-degree corner ones, so I had to cut these a little more to make them fit. And I decided to add these hinges for extra support. This should help distribute the general weight of the thing, since each one is probably 60 or 70 pounds, right? But also I'm hoping less warping along the edge. That's the side that won't have the plywood extension over the edge, and I want to avoid water getting in as much as possible. I also needed something to grab and pull the lids to close them. That's better. I noticed that the position of the gas struts meant that the last foot or so of the lids closing was less like a controlled soft close and more like a sudden snap. And just gonna install a hinge for a lock. Right, more layers of protection. This is neoprene rubber. It smells really weird out of the package, but is water resistant and expands rather than cracks during changes in humidity and temperature. I put a layer of the stuff in between the two box lids. I attach it only to one end of one lid, but had the piece extend over the edge of the other lid. Since the lids are angled for water to run off from the first lid across to the second lid, that way I'm hoping the strip will prevent any water getting in that gap. It does mean that I have to be careful when opening the lids. You know, you have to first open this one, then this one, and close them in reverse. I glued another layer of the rubber for the hinge side for added moisture protection and water runoff. And finally I added an underlayment used as a leak barrier on roofs. It looks like the thin asphalt shingle layer, but it comes in a roll. not long after the installation, I had the first proper test. And no water inside. I was quite pleased. Ooh, I realized I didn't show how the workbench fits into the boxes. So here's a video I recorded after the tent ripped, and I decided it was time to put things away until the new one arrived. And the old tent lasted me a couple of years, but it did leak a little along one of the seams. So for the new tent cover, I decided to seal all the seams before checking it up. And it was finally time to get rid of the old lids, but before doing that, I took out all the screws and other hardware to reuse for a different project. As we all know, the cost of living is skyrocketing, especially if you keep supporting your mom and pop local hardware stores.
8 cents. I've got a family